Hi everyone, it's QuickyBaby and welcome back to World of Tanks, and today I've got a full tank review for you on the Tier 6 Polish medium tank. It is the 40 TP Habika. Lots of people have been calling this tank one of the worst vehicles at Tier 6, and I'm here to clear a few things up, give my opinion on the vehicle, as well as some tips and tricks to make your life a little less painful if you're planning on grinding through the last tank before the Polish heavies, which start at Tier 7. So without further ado, let's get started. So for the Polish tech tree, I made a conscientious effort to make sure that I didn't free experience modules where I didn't deem it necessary, and also that I started at the beginning of the tech tree because I wanted to have a well-rounded opinion of this tech tree and also to be able to eventually give you a good tech tree showcase on the line. And so let me begin by saying that this probably is the stinker so far for me, and I'm up to Tier 8 at the moment. But there's one thing that isn't terrible about this tank, and that is that you can kind of play it fairly well right from the get-go, and that's because the gun from the previous tank, the 25 TP, is kind of okay at Tier 6. It's not incredible, but it's not terrible. And you don't even have to research a turret or the tracks to be able to whack this gun on the tank, so at least you're not going to be completely horrific, like you were in the previous tank being forced to play at Tier 5 with 52mm of penetration until you kind of grinded through 10k. But this by no means means that the vehicle is a great tank with the stock gun, or even with its top 90mm. Let's compare the 40 TP to some of its competition at Tier 6, the P43 BIS, and also the infamous Cromwell Berlin. Immediately we notice that when you've researched the top gun on the 40 TP, the 90mm, that your DPM is significantly lower than the relatively new P43, and massively lower than the Cromwell Berlin, and that almost goes without saying because the alpha damage on this is 240, nearly double that of the Cromwell Berlin. And usually vehicles that have exceptionally higher alpha damage have much lower DPM, although that's kind of not the case with the Italian tank. One thing this vehicle does do well with is the penetration. 156 is great for a standard round, and you're not going to really have to dab the 2 key that much unless you're dealing with Tier 7 and Tier 8 tanks. And if you choose to fire premium, it's 198, which is significantly better than the Italian at 180, and just a little bit worse than the Cromwell Berlin's 202. Another thing that's good about the standard rounds on this tank is that they've got very good shell velocity actually. 950 means that you don't really have to give much lead at long ranges, and it can help you hit weak points on enemy tanks that maybe are moving at short to mid. Furthermore, this tank carries a whopping amount of ammunition. You're going to be able to take more than enough armor-piercing rounds and APCR rounds to use depending on the matchup that you get into. One thing that's annoying is when you run out of standard rounds, for example, when you're in a really nice matchup in the Cromwell Berlin, or alternatively premium rounds when you're not. The 40 TP will take more than enough, so you don't have to worry about that. Alright, so now on to gun handling. How does this 90mm stack up? Well, 2.7 seconds aim time, that's really not very good. 0.4 accuracy, the same as the Italian tank, much worse than the British vehicle. I must mention that aim time is worse than the Italian tank too. Now the vehicle has worse traverse speeds when moving than the Italian vehicle, but slightly better when it's just stationary turning the turret. And that kind of gives this tank the same feel as to the gun handling of the Tier 6 Italian when it's stationary and only turning the turret. The gun depression on this tank also is fairly comfortable at 8 degrees, which is really nice, the same as the Cromwell Berlin, and 1 degree better than the Italian tank. Now onto mobility, and it looks really good, right? 50 kilometers an hour, great stuff. 18 backwards, not too bad. And oh dear, look at this. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a big old girl. The tank weighs over 40 tons. That's really significant for a Tier 6 medium, and definitely take that into account if you choose to ram your opponents in this thing. But it lacks the engine power, less than the other two vehicles, giving it a power to weight ratio of just over 11. That's really sluggish. That's kind of slow for a heavy, let alone for a mid-tier medium. The Italian tank is more like an Italian sports car in comparison, with a power to weight ratio of over 15, and the Cromwell Berlin, well, it literally has double that of the 40 TP, and its ground resistance is a half. This thing is like a light tank compared to the 40 TP, which is a very slow heavy. Thankfully, the vehicle's traverse speeds are not as bad as a heavy, and this can really help when you actually manage to build up some momentum in the tank, either along a flat, hard surface, or alternatively, when you're coming down a hill. All right, so now onto the armor. Surely that extra weight of the tank should go into the armor, right? And yeah, it kind of does. The vehicle's got 90 millimeters of hull armor. Really nice, better than the Italian and massively better than the British vehicle. And 130 at the front of the turret. That's amazing for a tier 6 medium, right? Well, yeah, it kind of is, but the vehicle just doesn't really feel like it's got all that kind of turret armor because it's got no spacing around it at all. And so this means at your very best, you're just not ricocheting equal tier tanks that have 150, and it's also got a horrible cupola on top of the vehicle, which is really easy for anybody to see over a ridgeline, and they are going to be able to penetrate you before you can even bear your gun on even the weak point on top of their tank. And so this really makes the armor advantage that the 40 TP has just insignificant because you can't work a ridgeline in this vehicle without exposing that weak point. And the frontal hull armor, while it's maybe good against those tier 4 and tier 5 opponents, you can't really depend on getting into a matchup like that. Thankfully, this slow lumbering tank has 360 meters view range, which means that it's easily going to be able to spot for itself, but I still recommend taking binoculars on this vehicle unless you have an exceptionally skilled crew, maybe from your poodle that you move into here, and then you probably can get away with coated optics. Anyway, I think that's quite enough theory crafting. Let's give the 40 TP a trial by combat on the battlefield. Alright, so firstly I want to show you the 40 TP in a nice matchup, and I must clarify that I am now using the top gun on this tank. And this was actually the first battle that I played in the vehicle with the top gun. I don't know, struggling? Yeah, I think I was struggling with the 75mm on this vehicle because you really depend on the tanks just sitting out in front of you, and the 130 alpha damage on that gun just doesn't feel like it's enough, and the tank doesn't have the armor or the mobility to really control the engagement. If you've got lots of armor and or maybe you've got tons of gun depression, and you don't have a big old weak point on top of your tank like this, well then you can kind of get multiple shots out against your opponents, right? But that just doesn't work out with this slow lumbering tank, and just look at this. I'm just crossing my fingers and I'm hoping that something scary doesn't come around the corner and just obliterate me. You know, to all intents and purposes, the enemy super heavy, the OI, could have made it into that position roughly at the same time. That's how bad the mobility is on this tier 6 medium. In fact, if you're wanting to play this vehicle, the first thing that you must accept is this is not a medium tank. It's a heavy with a medium class tag on it. That's all there is to say about it. But when the vehicle does manage to hit its opponents, yeah, it does have that full tier 6 heavy tank alpha. Let's see if we're going to be able to hit this 25 TP. Come on, buddy. Come on, I know you're going to come back. I know you're going to come back. You're going to get shot, you're going to lose a few hit points, then you're going to come back, you're going to reverse, and then I'm going to high roll. And now I sound like Mystic Meg. It's not exactly like... I actually said this at the time. I must clarify, of course. I know what's going to happen if I'm doing a post-game commentary. This isn't like I'm streaming on Twitch, right? But I actually said that at the time. I was so confident about it, and it did go well. And a nice start to this game, picking up my first kill on the tank that grows up to be me, right? The 25 TP. All right, and this is just the dream. Yeah, this is what I'm talking about right now. And look at this alpha against these tier 4 tanks, these poor 14 TPs below me, does feel very significant. We're taking off half of their hit points. This 240 alpha just feels amazing. But you got to question, you can already do this, right? You can do this in the tier 6 Italian medium tank. Does this vehicle really bring anything new? Spoilers, probably not, but maybe at least my frontal armor will. So I decide that I'm going to take the fight to these tanks here, try and bounce them with my frontal armor, see if I can pick them apart, and there you go, we pick up a kill, and I'm looking to my left because I'm terrified about the OI putting a round into me. The Panzer IV takes a swing at me. We're going to return the fire, 218 damage to him. Looks like he's using a stock turret on that tank, and uh-oh, there is the German, sorry, not the German super heavy, the Japanese super heavy. We put one round into the side of his tracks, and this Keyho is tracking me underneath that tank, could you believe it? And there you go, I bounce a standard round there off the very balanced frontal armor off this OI, and oh dear, looks like, yeah. That Keyho is actually firing premium rounds into my tracks right now, that cheeky lad. But I don't think this OI realizes that he can't depress the gun over the tank boobs that this tank has. So he actually misses. He just whiffs right over the top of my vehicle, and that allows me to reload in time to finish off the OI. And am I going to bounce this Panzer IV? Come on. Oh, Get down, Mr. President. As that tank drives in front of me, the 14 TP saves me there, and that allows me to reload to finish off the Panzer IV. And I'm going to reload standard rounds, and I'm going to... Oh, come on. Where was my justice kill there against that Keyho, who was just locking down my tracks for all of that time? How awkward was that scenario? You know what, I would have probably done the same if I was driving a Keyho in a tier 4 tank. I don't think he was actually managing to go through the side of my vehicle. No, he was just managing to track me at first, and then bam, in come the premium rounds and start managing to go through. And that Keyho was actually taking off substantial amounts of my hit points. Thank goodness that OI drove like a bit of a zombie there. I guess, I don't even know. Do OI drivers even have to think in World of Tanks? Do Japanese heavy tank drivers even have to think, oh no, I've triggered them all. That's it. Comments are dead. I can't read the comments after I release this video now. They're all going to be gone. But while I make some jokes and kind of distract you from the slowness of this tank, I almost don't want to because this is a tank review, right? Look how slow this vehicle was to get into position. And I was frankly just fortunate that my team didn't quite manage to finish off that vehicle. But all in all, you know, a pretty strong result for this tank. We pick up 5 kills, 2,659 damage. But it was a nice matchup, right? Alright, so now we're playing against tier 8 tanks, but I'm still using the 90mm, although I did have a few games where I was playing with the 75mm against tier 8 tanks, and you know, they were expensive. The stock gun, so to say, on this vehicle, well, it's not really the stock gun, because hopefully you've unlocked it on the previous tank, on the 25 TP. It's not the best, is it? It's got 135mm of penetration. Even if you dab the 2 key, it's got 175. And 175mm of penetration still isn't enough to go through some tier 7 tanks reliably, let alone tier 8 vehicles. And I'm trying to trundle forwards here, and even though we managed to build up some momentum by going slightly down slope, we didn't really get into position quickly. And I'm going to try and loop one over the ridge line here into the T21, and we do manage to do that. There's a T92 on the enemy team. That is a scary tank to meet in your tier 6 mediums. I'm trying to go backwards and forwards right now to avoid the artillery, because the T71 is in a platoon with the Jagdpanther and the GW Panther, and I was expecting them to be focusing me here. And there you go, T71DA, heat round. Oh, hooray, another heat round. What's the point of having any armor in that scenario? I guess you could say that about anything, right? Premium rounds countering armor. But usually when I'm playing my medium tanks, I use my mobility to be able to flank my opponents, but I really felt because this vehicle was so slow, what could I do? If I wanted to try and drive over towards the east of this map, I would still be driving there. If I wanted to try and push aggressively down the west, I would probably be caught out in the open. I really felt like because of the lack of mobility of this tank, my hand was forced, and I had to try and play the support role in the center. I look across to see where those rounds went in, and also to check out the cupola of the tank. Now I'm just going to have to wait and hope that the T-3485M makes a mistake. I loop a shell, doesn't manage to go exactly where I aimed it, because remember this vehicle does have 0.4 accuracy, which means it can't even really snipe at long range. Oh, it's just so peculiar. This tank, you really have to engage your opponents at short to mid, hope that either they don't have the penetration to shoot you, or they're distracted, and that they don't try to run away from you because you're never going to be able to catch them. Oh, that one went in. T-3485 leaving his butt around the corner there. And we put, hopefully, 240 alpha damage into that tank. We're going to go for another one. No, we're not. Did we manage to damage him or not? Oh, I can't remember if he was on full health or not. No. Oh, yeah, no, we didn't hit him earlier. Oh, come on. He's just baiting me right now. What are you doing, T-3485M? Please, please, come on. I'm playing this tank. It's bad enough. I need some experience in my tier 6 Polish medium. Everybody knows how much this tank sucks, and I need every little bit that I can get my hands on. Another thing that just feels completely frustrating playing this tank is that I don't have the mobility now to try and relocate. Usually if I feel that the field would be a stalemate, I would probably try and maybe flank round, try and make a push around the east. Or alternatively, I could fall all the way back here and try and get into a position here to try and play some the support role. But no, really this vehicle just has to go into one position and hope that the opponents are going to come into that position. And so I feel like to do well in this tank, you need to have knowledge of the most important locations on the map. Well, of course, you're going to do better in all tanks, but this one especially. Because it's a lot like the old FV4202 when that was at tier 10. Or alternatively, some of the slower medium tanks in the game now, like the Super Pershing, which kind of plays like a heavy tank, right? You just have to trundle into a position, and you kind of have to hope that the enemies are going to choose to go there as well. And if they don't, well, you're really going to struggle. The T-3485M gets finished off by my Tier 8 French light tank down the flank, and unfortunately for me, the enemies are pushing through the town, so I decide that I have to fall back and engage them. Well, yeah, of course this is really going to happen because there's a VK100-01 on the enemy team, and it looks like he managed to smash through the Patriot on my team, who's rocking a 43% win ratio. Oh dear, what a surprise. Alright, so what am I going to do here? Well, the first thing I do is I dab the 2 key because I'm probably not going to even be able to penetrate the weak point there of the VK with a premium round aiming up into the lower plate of that tank. 198mm of penetration. And so I'm not even going to bother. I'm not going to waste the money on that tank. Instead, I'm going to go for the T-29 and try and do some damage against him. And this is really what this tank comes down to. If you want to try and engage vehicles that are not lower tier than you try and work with your allies, you wait for the enemies to fire, you wait for them to shoot your allies, and then hopefully you manage to penetrate them. And more often than not, you're even going to be having to dab the 2 key because while the penetration is good on the standard rounds, it's just not competitive against Tier 7 and Tier 8 tanks. Alright, well, at least I should be able to win a fair fight against a 40 TP, right? Yeah, there we go. I put 1 round into him, and now I'm reloading forever because the DPM of this tank is tragic. I repair my tracks, but looks like I do it too late, as somehow that charioteer manages to loop a shell round the corner into the back of the tank. And yeah, my team are not left long for this world. Or shall I say, it's not long until my team leave this world and at least have to play another tank. So our first game on airfield was an ace. We get a steel wall, a high caliber for 2,659 damage dealt and 5 kills, but I would just say that I got lucky in this game. It was a nice matchup, and I got lucky as well. But thankfully, that was enough to give me the ace, and at the time, I was having such a bad time with this tank that I just decided to free experience it. But that's only because I made a promise with Twitch that I said that if I'm going to get an ace in this game, I did it at the start of the battle. I said I will free experience it, and I'm a man of my word. I haven't free experienced any of the other Polish vehicles so far. I grinded through the Tier 2, the 3, the 4, the 5. I grinded through the 7, and I grinded the top gun on the 40 TP. Actually, I was playing this tank with the stock gun. I refused to free experience the top gun on this tank, and it was the very first game I played with the 90mm that I did ace. But I'm not trying to pretend that this was a huge amount of skill. It was just being in the right place at the right time, and that's something that's going to have to happen in the 40 TP, because more often than not, my games went like this. Sure, I finish 4th on experience in the worst possible matchup, which is pretty good, and 4th on damage as well, but I paid for it. I lost credits with the premium account on this tank, although a lot of that was down to the fact that I was resupplying the premium consumable, the Smarlets on this tank at full price. But nevertheless, this tank, it's horrible. Should you buy this tank for the joy of playing it? Hell no. Also, do you know what sucks about this tank? Is that if you're a Poodle driver, then you're probably going to put your exceptionally skilled, you're going to want to have a crew for the Poodle, right? And if you're going to have a crew for the Poodle, then you're going to want to put them in another one of the mediums, and you kind of only got 2 to choose between, the 40 TP and the 25 TP at Tier 5. Now, I would thoroughly recommend putting them in the 25 TP, because this thing is horrible. It really is. I would far rather play the Italian medium tank any day of the week, if only just for the engine power and also for the slightly better aim time or the dispersion when you're moving, or the fact that you don't have a big old weak point on top of your tank. This thing's horrible, and Wargaming will hopefully make changes to the tank. There's 2 changes that I would make to the vehicle, either one or the other or both, immediately to make this thing a lot more fun. Number 1, I would make the weak point much stronger and just up the armor of the tank a little bit. If you want to leave it as slow as a heavy tank, then it's got to have kind of heavy tank armor to be able to make up for it. If this is not an option, then Wargaming, increase the engine power of this vehicle. Why does it need to be so slow? You've just put the Italian medium tank in the game, and it's pretty much better than this vehicle in every single way. And my condolences to everyone out there who really wants to get up the Polish heavy line without dumping a whole load of free experience or paying some gold to convert it. I'm in the fortunate position where I've kind of unlocked all of the tanks, and so I save up my free experience as I go along, because you get 5% of your regular experience. And I think I worked out the other day that I'm usually making about 15,000 free experience every week. That's 60,000 free experience every month just for playing the game without doing any conversions. And so, of course, I save it up over the months, and then I can spend it where I want to on the Polish tech tree, or shall I say when a new tech tree comes out. But As I said at the start of the video, I've made a conscientious effort to not spend it in places that I thought that were absolutely, utterly not necessary in the tank, going as far as to grinding this vehicle with the 75mm. I've played the tier 8 without the top engine. I did that for the tier 7 as well, and I played the tier 4 and the tier 5 without the top guns, because I wanted to get an idea of what the Polish tech tree is like grinding, and it's not fun. It's really not fun. But let me tell you, having played the tier 8, there is a silver lining. So if you're getting through it and you're not wanting to quit the game every single time you play the tank, there is light at the end of the tunnel, ladies and gents, and stay tuned to the channel as I will be reviewing the tier 7 and the tier 8 Polish tanks in the upcoming weeks. And so that's it for today, ladies and gents. I hope you enjoyed this video, or maybe it was just useful to you. If it was, please consider giving it a thumbs up, but if you hated it, make sure you give it a thumbs down, and let me know in the comments down below whether you think I've been too harsh or too fair on the 40 TP. And as always, thank you so much for watching. You've been epic, and hopefully I'll see you soon.